That's nice.
Well, let's start then. So if everyone who isn't speaking could mute, and welcome everyone to this online episode of Converging for Path 2021, an initiative to share the culture of the Islamic world in many different ways. It's a partnership between the Barakat Trust and Asia House, and with the sponsorship of the Al Tajir Trust and the Aga Khan Trust for Culture's Education Department. We're very happy that you could be here on what I'm sure will be a fascinating hour with Oliver Wilkings, who's technically a filmmaker, but actually this isn't about filmmaking as such, it's about storytelling. And Ollie has been working on the idea of telling stories with communities, of enabling communities to tell their stories and to reflect on their identities and their heritage and their culture for many years. And actually I met him in Cairo about 17 or 18 years ago, working on very interesting projects, and his experience is international. He's worked in many different regions of the world, but mainly the Middle East. He studied initially at the University of Leeds and then also at Central St. Martin's. And the way that we're going to do it is going to be quite conversational. Ollie is going to talk about his work, his perspective, and he's going to show us many film clips from his work. And if you have questions and comments, which I hope you do, please put them in the chat box and Ollie will answer them in the last 15 minutes of the session. So Ollie, I'll start off simply by asking you, what are you going to focus on tonight and what will be the theme of your presentation and conversation?
Right, yes. So we're going to look at two projects, one in a place called Shotob in Egypt, in southern Egypt, like a small village. Oh, actually, for most countries, quite a big village. And Socotra in Yemen, which is an island off Yemen. And they're two different communities with different issues, but they both are struggling around preserving their heritage, both the sort of physical heritage and the kind of intangible heritage. So yeah, we'll try and talk through the processes we try to use to put people at the center of their own personal stories and try and put the community at the center of their story. So we're trying to take people on a journey through these projects. I mean, in terms of storytelling, I mean, everyone likes to talk about storytelling structures. And I mean, I come from the tradition of things like the hero's journey and these kind of story arcs that that fit very well into certain media forms, such as films and TV. And I think a lot of us are probably aware of the patterns of story that run through different kind of media that we're exposed to. And often in other cultures and other countries that have traditional forms of media, they follow up very different structures. So you know, if you define media as a space in which communication goes on, then that can be anything from gathering around a light bulb to a wedding to, you know, oral storytelling. So I think we tried to keep the definition of media as loose as possible and just refer to it as a kind of space in which kind of communication goes on. So coming at it from a filmmaking perspective, we've tried to do a few of these projects where we're bringing as many possible levels of media and storytelling to engage different generations within communities around the traditional stories. So in some cases, adapting traditional stories to more modern media as a way of getting young people excited about it. So hopefully, as we go through the process and show you clips, you'll see how the participants of these projects, what's driving them, what their problems are, and how engaging in connecting with their own community's stories and their own community's heritage, it can change them internally. So they go through an internal story arc. And that hopefully will create an emotional change, you know, make them proud of their community and make them want to do things to protect it. So these two projects, so one of them is was one in Shotob in Egypt. This was a British Museum project, primarily an archaeological project sponsored by the British Council Newton Musharraf Fund. And they had an existing archaeological dig there. The problem in Shotob was really around the physical, the village is built on an actual archaeological site, and people really just wanted to build houses on the site. People were throwing rubbish into the site. There was very little value with the physical site. So our starting point in that place, our assumption as we went in was that, you know, that people didn't really have a connection with the physical heritage. So we wanted to try to do something to help them connect with it. So that was our kind of assumption. I'm just going to put my timer on because I have no idea what let's put a stopwatch on. Okay. And the other project was in Socotra, which again was an archaeological project, which was being run by the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh, and partnering with various different people, including the Arab Regional Centre for World Heritage. And again, the starting point there was an existing project run by Julian and Alan, where they were trying to engage the community around the physical, tangible archaeology. So they had a team of people they were training to record the heritage there. And I came in to try and work with the community to find ways of initially recording the intangible heritage. So the songs, the stories, the crafts and this kind of stuff. We couldn't go to the island because of the sort of political situation, which meant that we ended up doing a lot of training workshops in Bahrain, where we brought people from Socotra over. So we had a kind of 2-year period in the run up to actually going to Socotra, where we, you know, really built up some strong relationships. We had Ismail, who was a Socotran guide passionate about heritage, who was working for the Arab Regional Centre for World Heritage. And he was like an invaluable person for making things happen. So it was 2 different projects, 2 different situations and 2 different challenges. So sorry to go long about that. So the basic structure of what we do, I think in each case, and of course this is refined at different times, but the idea really is to go in there and kind of redefine what is heritage for a community, because often a community has a very static idea of what heritage is. In Egypt, often it's an idea that, you know, that's something that's run by a government department and we have no connection with it. So we like to try and redefine heritage, set a kind of intention for the community, you know, get the community to support us, and then we can build our workshop within that intention. And then the participants of the workshop, usually young people, we set them out into the community to collect stories from the older generations usually. And then they bring those stories back and they rework them into some kind of form, you know, often a presentation or a theatrical piece or a film. And then they retell those stories back to the community. We screen the film, we have a theatre performance. And through doing that, they kind of gain ownership of the stories, and the community gets shared experience as an audience. So that's the basic kind of idea of what we do. So let's start off by looking at setting the problem. So we'll go into a community, as I said, we'll often have a kind of preconception of what we think is the sort of problem or the challenge in the community, and then we'll try to sort of dig down and find some interviews to set the problem up for the community. So we'll start off with looking at Socotra. And Socotra, remember, this is a place that the issue in Socotra is different from Shotob because it was a language issue primarily. Like, you've got an older generation that speak an oral language, it's not a written language, and a younger generation that have had enormous changes during that time. The airport's been built in 1999, I think it was. It's like 20 years ago. And since then, you know, the whole education system has come in Arabic, and the younger generation, you know, often are not speaking the same language as their parents. I'll just show you a picture here. So this is the when we went to the parents, we got to get permission from all the parents, and this is the permission slip signed by each of the parents that their kids could join the workshop. And I thought it was interesting because it shows you the literacy level, and I don't want to show that in a bad way particularly. I want to show you that they are from two different generations. These guys don't speak Arabic, they don't write Arabic, they come from an oral tradition where yeah, reading and writing are just not part of it, and it's a different way of thinking. And I'm going to show you now a clip from the guys in Socotra talking about what this problem is like on the ground, and just bear that in mind that
كلمات كثيرة كانوا يستخدموها أجدادنا ما عاد استخدموها آبائنا، وكلمات أيضا كثيرة كانوا آبائنا يستخدموها لم نستخدمها نحن.
يعني ما نعرف اللغة العربية صح حتى أن نوصل إلى نتحضر في هذا المنطقة، في منطقة التونسية، بحكم أن تتطور بالإنترنت بالتلفزيونات بالشغلات المتطورة. يعني بدأت أن اللغة السكندرية تختفي. العيال يقول لك يروح على المدارس لا أشوفهم ولا يشوفهم، يتقدم ويروح برا، والحرمة تروح لحالها وأنا أروح لحالها. لهذا ما اجتمعنا نحن والعيال حقنا، فهذا غلط.
طبعا عقب نحافظ لحن عادات وتقاليد السقاطر عتايف النظر عقب نورت سن لحن بدأ ودقا قيل دقا لان على تعود بس على دنزقم شيء على دنزقم شيء أنا يعني الحيرة والله قال لنا ولا بكرر شيء مبارك دي فريق طار نحي لايف يقدر لكان هي واتساب شيء تليفون شيء فيديو شيء ومسلسلات شيء خلاص هلا قدر ساعة انزقام دقيقة ما قنيا وزعم حانا كرام قال حكاية شمدلتي حانا داخلين دقيقة أنت ضدبلك شلبيلي ضد هاي قد أنا كلمة دقيقة اسم تاع اللي كان قاقيا.
So I hope you could hear that all right. I can't actually hear it because I think the way Zoom set up, but hopefully you did hear it. You better message me, Safe, if there's any issues with the audio. So yeah, I think that those two fathers are kind of amazing. I mean, the sort of heartfeltness when they talk about this inability to connect with their own children is very kind of, you know, we can really relate to it. But I think the second father talks about these different media. If we think of media as these spaces in which you communicate, and he lists these things, football is one of them, WhatsApp is one of them, TV, soap operas, these are all spaces in which, you know, the traditional Socotran heritage is not, you know, not able to exist because they're not and they're spaces that his kids are comfortable in, but he's not. And I think it sort of shows you that they're not meeting in that same space. So what we try to do is open up a space where we can kind of bring the two together during the projects generally, but also bear in mind that this is a problem all over the place. I mean, you know, in Wales they were not teaching Welsh up until quite recently. I know Welsh people who can't speak Welsh, but their children can because it was reintroduced into the education system. So I'll play you another clip now from Egypt where you'll see that one of them specifically talking about this idea of bringing it into the, you know, bringing the idea of local identities into the curriculum.
الدولة المفروض انها تنزل القرى الأثرية اللي زي شطب وغيرها والقرى الأثرية المفروض انها تنزل في المناهج التعليمية، وده طبعا هيزيد يعني يخلي حتى الأطفال والتلاميذ يبقوا يعني فخورين بأنهم من قرية عريقة.
مثلا نفسي اللي اعرفه مثلا تاريخ شطب، ايه حكايه شطب مثلا زي ما حضرتك ما تقول كده، اللي مثلا اجدادنا يعرفوه ومثلا توفوا واحنا ما نعرفش عنه حاجه واحنا لسه طالعين جيل جديد، نفسنا نعرف حكايه شطب عشان احنا ما نعرفهاش.
I'm just pausing it at this moment. I think you can still hear me. So what we've done here is we're showing part of this film that we made, and then we use that film to play back to the community to help set the community intention for doing something about it and allow us to run our workshops. So often we'll go and make a film that kind of establishes the problem, gets the leadership of the community on board so that we can go in with their support. So what you see coming up now is us showing what you've just seen to the community.
هنسمع عن التاريخ القديم إن شط دي سمعت من راجل كبير كان عنده بتاع 90 سنة.
لكن تحت لازم شقة وسخن وبارد وسيراميك كده هو الوضع بقى دلوقتي. عن زمان كل وقت يعني وله أذان. كان زمان وضعه ودلوقتي وضعه.
اللي العالم كله ومصر كلها تعرف ان في قريه اسمها شط واللي ليها تاريخ فرعوني قديم.
واول خطوه نهائيه اهل شط نفسهم بانهم يعرفوا اكثر عن تاريخ القريه، مش كل التاريخ موثق، في تاريخ محكي لسه ما نعرفوش.
Yeah, so in the process we have to get everybody on board, and in some places it's easier than others, and Egypt is frustrating because the authorities can be difficult. Funny enough, Yemen was incredibly easy, we had so much support, but I think often it's because what we're doing doesn't necessarily fit into a box. And I know with the with the British Museum it was frustrating for them because they're treated as an archaeological mission, so us coming in to do our thing, it doesn't quite fit into what they do, and the authorities don't really understand it, or yeah, anyway, we had a lot of difficulties in Shotob, which is another story, but just to kind of give you that frame. So we set the intention, and I think something that's worth remembering here is that these guys are all from marginalized communities in the sense that they're away from the main cities and the main sources of media, so they become consumers of media that's fed to them, like we all do: advertising, internet stories, soap operas, TV, film, all of that stuff. It gets fed to them. And I think there's two things. This is my sort of assumption going into this stuff. There's two things. One is that their kind of dreams and aspirations are crafted outside of their communities. And it's true for a lot of us around the world that, people, advertisers will set a kind of hero's journey story for us, where if you leave the community and you go to the main city, you benefit, and what happens is people don't see value in their own communities, and people just want to leave. I'm going to play you a clip now, which is in Shotob again, and this is when we've already got the permission of the parents to work with the young people, and there's a guy and some girls, and they're talking about, it's interesting because you get this sense that they want to form their own local identities, but they can't because they don't know how, and that's part of the reason that we come in.
اسمي محمد، وشهرتي محفوظة أنا من صحابي، اشتغلت مسرح قبل كده وبحب أشتغل مسرح، بحب الإنجليش،
والله أهل شطب حاليا كل ما يشغلهم هو إزاي يطلعوا من شطب، الشباب يعني، لكن الناس الكبيرة مهتمية بتاريخ شطب وبتحب تحكي عن تاريخ شطب، لكن الشباب مش مهتم.
يعني هم شافوا الفيلم اول مره كانوا حاسين ان هم بيعملوا حاجه هم مش عايزين، ايه يعني اللي موجود في القريه ممكن يتعمل عليه فيلم.
حسيتي ليه بعد ما اتفرجتي على الفيلم؟ حسيت ان الشغل الهجين مع متوقعين الاول يعني.
فعلا لازم نفتخر بيها، مش مصر بس كقاهره نفتخر بيها ان احنا من مصر، لا بالعكس، يعني مش معنى اننا من قريه او زي ما الناس بتقول ان احنا مثلا بره، يعني مش زي المدينه ان احنا مخنا مثلا متجفل وكده.
اسم شط في الخريطه كده بس مش عارفين ازاي.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning here that in Egypt there is a kind of attitude towards the Saidis, the people from the south, that's kind of a bit derogatory, coupled with the fact that all TV representations of people from the south of Egypt come through, you know, Cairo-based TV channels. That's probably not 100% true, but I think there's a big element of that people feel that there are no stories that they can relate to that they see. Yeah, they feel disconnected from the place. And as the guy said before, you know, he wants to leave, he wants to migrate, he wants to go abroad. So I think like what we try to do next is we try to redefine what the idea of heritage is and find something for them to connect to locally in their community. So we go in and we build a workshop. I'll show you some pictures from the Socotra workshop if I can find them. Yeah, so this is the workshop in Socotra, which initially, you know, the idea really is to try to build a safe place for young people to come and have fun. I mean, this was Jakob who led the workshop, and we'll meet later on. You know, he was all about creating a sense of fun, a space where they can relax and enjoy themselves, and there's no pressure, not like the kind of pressure of being in school. So as part of what we did, part of the Socotra Heritage Project was, you know, these guys, there was a big team who were working on the tangible side with Julian, who'd been trained to deal with the archaeology. And we wanted to use these guys. Please face the microphone. Difficult to turn away from the mic. That should be here. Hopefully that's better. I'll speak up a bit. Don't turn away. Right. No turning away. What was I saying? So anyway, so in Socotra, we wanted to sort of get people out of the classroom and get them into a kind of fun environment where they can learn, and we wanted to involve the experts. So I'll show you a clip now of the guys that were trained on the Socotra Heritage Project as archaeologists, and how we got them to engage with the young people to try and get them excited about this idea of heritage and make them feel that they were part of something, you know, exciting. We're trying to turn the young people into like ambassadors. Okay.
إذا حصلتوا موقع أثري تمرين كي سكن موقع أثري ضلع تمرين ضلع موقع أثري ضلع أفراد حاضرين المنطقة هذه خلي المنطقة نلحق نشوف نسيلك يا سلام ايش هذا؟ هذا تعتبر تاريخنا. هذا تعتبر ايش؟ تاريخنا. يعني نعرف من خلال هذه الرسوم نعرف ايش علاقات السقطريين بالخارج، مع من يتواصلوا، مع بايش يسافروا، ايش كانوا يعيشوا، ايش الحيوانات اللي كانت معهم. تمام؟ يعني الان من خلال الرسمه هذه ايش تشوفوا؟ فين؟ ايش برازي؟ الرسومات هذه يحكي لنا هذا صاحب الرسومات انه ايش الحياه اللي موجوده معهم. نمشي شجره نمشي شجره شنو؟ شجره تدخل ايش تمره ايوه ترجع اكتب زمان اكتب
في زمان يرسمه خي بيعي الجمال ولا يرسمان في رسم الشرعون يعني كان دوجر تيم ذكريات حن ذكرين حنا.
Yeah, that last little bit that he said, where he talks about they carved these things in the rock to be remembered, which I heard again from another kid who, when he was going to go on stage, said, I want to go on stage so that I will be remembered in the future. And I think there's something quite nice about that. It's something quite deep. Right, so yeah, so we're trying to set intentions for these young people and get them excited about the subject matter. We'll show you now another clip from from the kids connecting with nature with this guy Ahmed Rumali, who I was told a couple of days ago was spotted on Yemeni TV talking about nature. So he's obviously got a taste for the limelight.
أنا دردها عدة فوائد بس من ضمن الفوائد حقه أن يعوم الحيتان وتحربشها حصل لك جارح ولا حصل لك شيء ولا إيه نطف ونطف خلاص يتوقف دور ثاني حي دور باشا هو تحربت ما كان حي تحربي الله ينطف ثاني خلاص يتوقف دور أيوة خلاص يلا من عائله خلاص
يعني بابك ما استغلفه وكم عايزين حكي جربس عمر ده
تيوم كيسيربس عمر ديو يتا نزل يجرب عدة فوائد ضدك بس فوائد.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice the way he really got that young girl to kind of contribute, you know, with her story about her father. And I think that's, again, you know, don't forget that a lot of school stuff in the Middle East is kind of rote-based learning, and we're trying to do something a little bit different here, where we're trying to really engage people in a sort of emotional way into this subject matter. So yeah, I think that when we planned this, we were talking about exactly this stuff with the guys that were leading the kids there, and it's nice to see it coming through. Right, so then we move on to getting the young people into this subject of oral stories, and in both the cases in Egypt and in Yemen, we basically, once they understood what heritage was, and they understood it wasn't just some sort of physical site that they didn't have any connection with, but it was actually about intangible heritage as well, and stories within their community and their grandparents, they got quite excited about it. And I'll show you a clip now from Shotob, where these young people, just while we're on the subject of young people, it's interesting because you know, I've been working with young people a lot for a long time in Egypt. We did some really interesting stuff with them, and I was kind of convinced that they were a really good way of broaching difficult subjects. But I think the more we work on this, the more you realize it is about young people. It's about the entire community. It's about trying to connect people at multiple different levels. So I think what you're seeing coming up now is quite nice with the guys in Shotob engaging with the community over these stories. And bear in mind that this is oral stories, right? Actually, before you see this clip, bear in mind that we're talking about oral culture, which is quite different from written culture. And I think on this clip, the first guys are speaking to a guy who's a sheikh, who's got a bit of a sense of humor, but you can see him like raising his eyebrows a bit because he's like, this stuff is oral, it's not written. And there's something different about oral and written culture.
في ناس هنا في البلد ما تعرفش أهمية شطب إيه، يعني الأغلبية إن إحنا وأنا برضه يعني لحد فترة قريبة كنت معتقد إن الكون ده شوية تراب.
ممكن يا شيخ أشرف تكلمنا عن إزاي الشطب دي يعني بدأت تاريخ، إيه معلومات عن الشطب، أحضار الشطب؟
والله أنا أعرف يعني حكاية درنك شطب دي وقصة الحريق دي اللي أنت عارفينها.
ممكن تحكي لنا بوجهة نظرك؟
تعيدها تاني؟
نعم. وجهة نظرك، هنا وجهة نظرك.
على حسب ما سمعت.
في كذا وجهة نظر.
والله أنا على حسب ما سمعت، أنا ما قرأتش عنها بصراحة.
حكايه ان نفس القصه يبقى لها كذا حكايه او طريقه اخرى، دي برضو بتيجي لقدم القريه، ان مثلا مش كله يعني عاش في الزمن ده او كله شاف، ممكن ده يسمع غير ده يعرف غير ده.
في ناس بتقول 3، في ناس بتقول 4، في ناس بتقول 7.
لا انا اسمع ان حرقت 7 مرات. طب وكلهم من نفس من درنك مثلا او مثلا في عصور تاني بعديها؟ ما اعرفش والله. بس لا يعني مش معقول يعني درنك حرقنا 7 مرات. يعني الاختلافات دي تسببها كتير، يعني مثلا ممكن يعني دي قصص حصلت من آلاف السنين لورا، فطبعا لما اجدادنا بيحكوا ممكن مثلا يكون واحد مثلا نسي تفصيل غلط فرقم متوصل له غلط.
الشطب اول البدايه النهايه من النهايه، احنا النهارده في الشطب لينا 3000 سنه. الميه في الاول كانت عم تقعد 5 اشهر على الارض.
الحريق ده هم اللي كانوا بيعملوه،
ايوه ما عشان يعلى كل سنه ما يجيش الميه. لا انا نفسي اقول لك تفهمني. في الاول كانت الميه لما اخذها تقعد 5 اشهر.
تمام.
طيب ال5 اشهر دول هم يقعدوا ومحبوسين، يقعدوا فوق الكوم ولا يقعدوا في الميه.
الحكاوي دي سواء مثلا اذا كانت صحيحه او غير صحيحه فكلها بتوصلنا لاساس القريه، بتوصلنا يعني او بتعرفنا يعني ايه كانت شطب زمان.
لا حكايه الديك اللي هو بتضربه وتفعل.
ما هو ده دراسه.
Yeah, that tickles me, that last interaction between that guy Mohammed Hussein, I think, and Ibrahim Naji, because he's so passionate about this story, and he's like arguing with them about this story and like trying to put his point of view across, and then at the end he's like, whether it's true or no, when he's away from them in a safe place, like whether it's true or not, it's very important, these stories. So you can see the kind of passion that it kind of starts to rise up inside people, which is kind of what we're trying to do here, take people on this journey, the participants, people watching, where they go through an external journey, an external story, and an internal sort of intangible story where they emotionally change. And on that subject, I want to show you a very quick clip of Ismail, because it's the same subject. It's the same subject of arguing around stories, and this is why intangible oral heritage is so different from the written stuff, because it isn't sorry, the focus has gone a bit crazy, but it isn't fixed in the same way, so it's alive. And just listen to what Ismail, who's the guy who's the Arab Regional Centre for World Heritage representative in Socotra, but he's also like a one-man passion for keeping heritage alive, really the guy behind all of this in many ways.
نفسي أشوف بعد هذا الصمت أسمع أصوات من الجمهور وهم بيختلفوا على القصة. هذا اللي يقول لا ما كان كذا وهذا خطأ. بكذا نحن أوصلنا الرسالة إنه في تراث مفقود، تراث آيل للاندثار.
Yeah, so you can see how we're talking about stuff that's not easy to put into words. I've noticed this in what people say, but people know that there's a value in that community engagement around this kind of malleable, changing, moving kind of heritage that isn't sort of rubber stamped. So where are we? I'm keeping an eye on the time because I know that I need to keep within 45 minutes roughly. 26 minutes, right, better crack on. Right, so okay, so yeah, we're going to look now at some of the story collecting that was done in Socotra, which, if you remember, we just saw the stuff in Egypt and Shotob, where they were arguing with the old guys. Here, it's the kids are younger, but just look how engaged they are around just kind of listening to this story stuff. Because remember that the parents were saying these guys are in their own media forms. They're stuck in WhatsApp, they're stuck playing football, they're stuck watching soap operas. But taking them out into this different media, this different situation where you've got people telling stories, they get very engaged. Okay, where are we?
يا مرحبا يا مرحبا سيدي يا بارد ناويين كده سكين كده سكين كده من سواع نجع دي من تسافر عقب صادق أبي تحكي يا صور بسواع وكانوا بدينا من سواع فتزعنا العيد من سواع يا ريال كده أصلا كده من سواع
هاي دقيقة هاي شيء دقيقة إيش قصايا تقول كذا حتندلنا وصل بين بعد القناة قصايا قمح قصايا أنت بطاري إلى ما هي صماي شعلة شيء دي قع شعلة شيء دي قع بقعد بعد شعلة شيء إلى بني سوي شيء صماي.
كانت أمي يعني متحمسة جدا عندما شاركت بهذا التعليم الأطفال، ولها شعور إنها يعني فخورة يعني بنفسها إنها يعني تحكي يعني الأطفال قصص يعني وأساطير وغناء.
نجيخة وعجنا بمغرزة وعجنا بمغرزة
ويا ليلى تحية طمة كبثت نشيدة عن الطفل. ندرب نيكي كل يوم حتى نحفظ نقل، بس بعدين نقدم مسرحية.
كان بدي أسألها إنه عشان لما ترجع البيت خلود اسألي أمك تعلمك الكثير عن الألحان مختلفة، فقالت عملتها قدم. أنا سألت أمي وعلمتنا وراح أسألها كمان. فجميل إنه هم بنفسهم من يعني اختلق عندهم شعور حب التعلم.
Yeah, sadly, that was Adab's mother. She died shortly after filming. So it's nice that, you know, we captured her in the film, and you know, she'll be remembered through the film, which is a nice thing. But you know, that song that she was teaching that little girl in the workshop there, you know, people were so interested in the community about what was going on in the workshop that they would ask, you know, what are you doing in the workshop? What's going on? What have you learned? And that song started to be sung, you know, all around the village. And you know, at night you'd be lying in bed and you'd hear groups of people passing by singing that song. So yeah, people got very excited, which was you know, because what we're about here is not just focusing on the kind of young people. We're trying to sort of reach out into the community with the project, you know, try and involve as many people in this as a sort of community story. Sorry, one sec. So they've got their stories. They've been out, they've collected their stories. In the case of Socotra, they were just continually kind of collecting stories and engaging with them. And then it's about bringing them back into this safe space and trying to kind of rework them and give them ownership of these stories, which is where we produce whatever it is. In the case of Socotra, it was creating a theatre piece. And, you know, they haven't really got theatre in the kind of conventional sense there. And we brought over this theatre director from Cairo, Jacob, who he was a celebrity, but before he'd arrived, everyone was so excited about him coming. But you know, he came there and he was introducing them to acting really for the first time. So this clip coming up is showing how those stories are being converted into something else that the kids have ownership over.
فنفسي ترجعوا تشتغلوا عليه تاني، تمام، وتشوفوا ازاي ممكن يطور في تفاصيل كده.
إنه الأطفال تغيروا كثير في وقت قصير. يعني التغيرات اللي طرأت على الأطفال إنه أصبحوا ممثلين. عذراء القيلولة مثلا، أنا أشوفها من بداية الأمر كانت قيلولة. عندما تأدي دور المرأة على العيون اختلفت كثير عذراء.
شوفك ودشان بيطير يمشي يا معمي يا عنودين بشان عينه وديه لما ركع بعدين اشتغلت نيا مثال عن عيون مصبيحة ونيا
حبتك السادة.
من حقيقة ما رأيت، أي أن الفتاة قلدت المشهد، وأنا لم أرى المشهد مثلا، أنا ما قد رأيته إلا خيال يعني يحكى لي، ولكن لما شفت الفتاة شعرت بعيني دمعت، والله يشهد أنا شعرت بعيني دمعت لما خرجت الفتاة، وكان تقليد في مكانه يوحي وكأن قد رأيته مسبقا، وأعيد ترتيبه.
Poor Adra, she played the old lady of the spring, and she's like forever known as the old lady. She was complaining about, I'm known as the old lady. But yeah, you can see there that that was actually the guy that told them the story, who came into the workshop because he was really interested in what they were doing, and he'd watched them preparing the piece, and you know, you can see that he was genuinely blown away to see something change from one media form, one kind of form, the story, the oral story, into this theatre piece. So it's, yeah, it is quite exciting to see these stories transformed in different ways. Bear in mind that in Socotra, you know, we had, you know, a lot of time there actually, and a lot of preparation. Shutub was a different situation in Egypt, and we didn't have so long, and we produced within about less than a week, I would say, they collected up the stories and they turned them into a kind of presentation. And then from that point, we were supposed to take it further, but we ran into some difficulties. But anyway, this is them taking that first step where they're retelling their stories to the community.
الحكاية الجاية مخيفة وكلها أساطير وحكايات من عوالم قديمة.
كان في واحدة بتذبح فروجة يوم في البيت، فلما
يعني انا شخصيا ما كنتش متوقعه ان البنات هيقدروا يقفوا ويحكوا الحواديت دي، انا فخوره بيهم جدا بصراحه.
لكن اهل البيت
هم بيحسوا ان هم جزء من المكان، وبيبتدوا يفكروا ده ان احنا مجتمع واحد او كوميونتي واحده، انا مش شخص، انا جزء من المجموعه الاكبر اللي انا عايش فيها، واللي هم بيتصرفوا بيه تجاه المكان ده بيحدد هو هيبقى ايه في المستقبل.
شكرا انكم شاركتونا رحلتنا، ودي مش كل قصتنا، دي بدايتها.
Yeah, I left it running to the credits there because, you know, this is all about ownership, and, you know, it's really important to make sure that they really felt that what they'd done was theirs. So, you know, in the edit of the film, we wanted to make sure it was presented as their film because, you know, so much of the content was down to them. So yeah, I think that's important. So in Socotra, we're moving towards the final event in Socotra, which, you know, what we're doing here, like I was saying, theatre is, in this sense, is a fairly new form in Socotra. It's not really developed in the same way as you'd find it in some other places. So what they do have there is they do have these storytelling competitions, which I think have developed out of a kind of history of traditional poetry that would be used in weddings and kind of community events, which, you know, I'm not an expert, although some people are, Miranda, but exactly what those forms took in terms of duration and over, you know, time, I think some of them could be incredibly long. But what happened is out of that came this idea of poetry competitions, and then developed into kind of cultural festivals. So we built our theatre performance into a kind of existing community event. We actually organised the event, but it's within a kind of form that people understand. Yeah, unfortunately, well, I mean, these cultural events do get politicized, like everything everywhere, and get hijacked by different sponsors and stuff. So we tried very hard to avoid that, and I think we succeeded. And what happened is kind of everybody turned up. So we were a bit worried about how that might play out, but but really, you know, what we did, of course, and I probably didn't mention this earlier, is that there are 3 main communities in Socotra that we sort of identified for this project. There's the fishermen by the coast, there's the guys up in the mountains, the goat herders, and then there's the kind of guys running the kind of palm groves, the farmers. So we tried it, I mean, that's what we sort of identified for this project as 3 separate groups. And we had 3 stories in this final performance that represented those 3 different groups that the kind of kids had collected up and turned into this theatre piece. So I'll show you now, yes, the guys going out onto the stage, I think. Where are we?
مش مشكلة لو أنا قلت كلمة مختلفة وكلمة غلط أكمل لأنه إحنا هنقدم مسرحية جميلة. موافقين؟
يعني الكل يخجل والكل يصيب بالخوف عندما يرى الجمهور قد ينسى دوره، لكن الأطفال أثبتوا بأنهم حقا لديهم الرغبة الكبيرة على تأدية هذا العمل المسرحي من خلال تدريبهم وتعريف المجتمع بأننا نحن أبناء سقطرى حاضرون ويمكن أن نستعيد تراثنا إن شاء الله في المستقبل بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى.
لما دخلنا المسرح لما جاء دورنا خلاص فرحانين مبسوطين.
So yeah, it was a good turnout, and yeah, it's kind of amazing to see how the participants, you know, the young people like Adra, that girl there, how she really did, you know, I mean, it was pretty new for Socotra to see young girls and boys on the stage like that performing. Yeah, and the other thing that we did there is Jakob, who led the theatre course, had to leave early, and unfortunately, well, he left on time, but unfortunately we had to postpone that final event for a week or so he wasn't actually there. So I edited it in such a way that it looked like he was there, like he's prepping the kids and then they go out on stage, and it was manufactured in the edit. So I was quite pleased that when the Socotrids saw it, one of them was like, what happened there? I thought he wasn't there. How did that happen? I was like, you know, magic of editing, which, you know, that to me is really important, because, you know, don't forget that, you know, these guys are also learning about the processes of filmmaking and storytelling, so that they can deconstruct the stuff that they are passive consumers of, you know. And when you start to see that there are these tricks in the processes of creating these media products, then it makes you more immune to kind of exploitation by, you know, advertising or whoever. It makes you more able to deconstruct those stories that are coming towards you, and then construct your own narratives. So I'll show you one last clip. What are we doing on time? We're down to 2 minutes. I'll show you the last clip of the very end of the performance. I just want you to see the girls. They're so funny. They're so kind of excited, and you can just see how they've been through this incredible internal journey, and on stage they're just, you know, bubbling with excitement.
لا فوق رجعوا فورد إن يتشعر من عنده إحساسية وعنده قلب يديك التوتية الصح لأنهم مكان معرض قصة رائعة.
الذي حسسني وأشعرني بهذا عندما رأيت ذلك الحفل وذلك المهرجان أثارني وشد انتباهي وذكرني بأشياء كنت لا أعرفها حقيقة. أذهلني وأذهل الحضور الكريم.
I love the way Sheikh has to sort of usher them off the stage. They don't want to leave. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much my time up. We haven't got onto the future and how we're going to use these products, but you know, maybe we can talk about that. So I haven't been seeing any questions. In fact, I can't hear a peep out there.
Thanks, Ollie.
Say hello.
Maybe if people could, if you have questions, to put them in the chat box and Ollie can answer them, or comments. Or
sounds good. Have you spotted anything, so if you want to relay to me?
No, not yet. So there are many people saying that they really like it and it's awesome and stuff. But this is a chance to actually ask Ollie things. So please go ahead and ask if you feel so inclined.
Keep blathering if you like.
Okay, Ollie, can you see? To what extent did the traditional stories serve a purpose?
Can you say that again, sorry?
Okay.
Oh, I can't see this. Wait a minute.
Okay.
To what extent did the traditional stories serve a purpose? I'm just trying to work out what we're talking about there. I mean, obviously they were a bridge between the older community and the younger community, and I would say that they're a place around which to connect everybody. And what we're doing is we're taking those older stories and we're sort of readapting them so that they connect more with different age groups. So Catherine, hi Ollie, could you explain a little more about how you work with partners and who is responsible for the funding of the filmmaking? Thanks, Catherine. Oof, it's always a good topic. Yeah, I mean, in both cases, I was working within an existing project that was archaeology based. So I was essentially subcontracted in these two cases. I mean, usually what happens with me is somebody sees something I've done, or somebody calls me up, an old client calls me up and they say, oh, we want to do something. And then we have a meeting. And then during that meeting, I kind of try to formulate, you know, what it is that you're trying to do, who you're trying to communicate to, and what is it you're trying to communicate, and what is your goal. You know, do you want some sort of change in those people, or do you want some sort of and then you go about constructing your projects around that. So yeah, we've done, I mean, almost, I would say every communication project is done like that. And I think the more you do them, the more confident you get in fighting for what you believe is the right way to do something, and being prepared to say no. I mean, I am prepared to say no quite often, because I think that, you know, you have to have the right kind of motivations to do it, and the right kind of, you know, and I think the motivations have to be based around the community. You've got to try to put them first, and that's not always easy as an outsider, but I think you have to try and you try to build a platform for them. I think I'm going off topic, but funding.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. Are there traditional sports or things like camera race on Socotra? I mean, Socotra is full of this stuff, and I mean, you're only seeing a tiny fragment of really the project and what's going on. It's such a rich place. And initially what we did with this project was brought this team over from Socotra to Bahrain, and most, you know, they were all trained in kind of archaeological skills, and then I trained them in collecting intangible heritage using video cameras to go out and collect stuff. And these two women, Sheikha and Adhab, became particularly keen on this thing, and they went back to the island with these video games and started documenting all of this intangible heritage. So there was interesting and strange sports where they jump long jumps and throw stones and jump. There was, you know, they got access to all of these women who were kind of involved in handicrafts and techniques that researchers who were from outside the community couldn't get to. So they came back with all this amazing footage of loads of different intangible heritage games and things, and screened them at the kind of meeting of the Friends of Socotra and presented them, which was great. So yeah, they have lots of different things. Camel racing, no, but they do have camels, so they maybe do race them. But right, has COVID stopped you developing new work? Yeah, I mean, I haven't traveled for a year, so carbon footprint down. So I'm doing other stuff. Editing, there's always tons of kind of half-finished projects lying around that are sort of self-funded. So I've got plenty of that stuff going on, and proposal writing, and also script writing. I'm doing a script writing workshop at the moment, trying to do some feature film scripts and short film fiction scripts. So there's always something going on. But this type of on-the-ground work has, for me, I haven't been traveling. But, and I was actually going to show you some of that stuff. The guys in Socotra have been using the film. The film's been kind of edited, almost finished. It's sort of ground to a halt a little bit, but they've taken the rough cut and they've been showing it on Socotra, and all of the guys that are in the film have seen it, you know, and everyone's, you know, it's going down very well. So they are using it out there. It's just that really we would like to develop a more strategic delivery of the film, and the guys in Socotra say the same thing, that they would like to, you know, carve out space where they can use that film as a sort of starting point for workshops and discussions and engagement, which is what we hope to do with it. And I think if we're going to do it anywhere, it'll be Socotra, because they're so kind of motivated. Melissa, such a transformative project. It's wonderful to see how engaged the children were and to get to light on the adults and children's face. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff in the film of really the adults like incredibly emotionally moved by what they see. And I think that it's magic to see how the stories that they're familiar with in the oral storytelling form, when they get changed into something visual and the young people are involved and it gets mutated, it can stimulate all kinds of things, emotions, but also, as Ismail was hoping, like arguments and passion and stuff like that. As an outsider, what was the main challenge? Geordie, as an outsider, what was the main challenge? What was the main cultural difference to challenge your work? I mean, it's all about your own personal baggage, isn't it? I mean, you know, you go into places with your framework and you try to apply it. You know, your mission is to get a job done, and therefore you sort of tend to apply things that don't always work. I mean, one of the things in Socotra was that I tried to influence the shaping of the theatre piece to make it a bit more in line with what I saw as theatrical storytelling, and I got into a debate with Jacob about that. He's very experienced at theatre in Egypt and Sudan, and he was just like, that's just not important. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So you have to know how to back down, and you have to engage with everybody and try to build up a team that can be open about this stuff. And that's why you know, every night of that project we were sitting around with Sheikh and Adab and Ismail, and we were deconstructing what was going on, and they were having massive conversations in Arabic and Socotra that I was trying to pick up on, and yeah, you have to relinquish control. I mean, which is not always easy. Neil, to what extent did you consider your filmmaker's role in the reconstructions of people's stories, and how or whether this project in essence becomes a part of that story or not? How do you think Yeah, there's a lot in that question, Neil. To what extent did you consider you, the filmmaker's role, in the reconstructions of the people's stories? I mean, I think this stuff used to bother me more. I mean, it does bother me, like as an outsider, a filmmaker's role as an outsider coming in and sort of tampering with people's culture. But I mean, you've got to bear in mind that these people are not isolated. They're all subjected on a daily basis to well, when I say Western, I mean like story forms that come through Western style media. So they're watching soap operas, and those soap operas have certain structural things that are not dissimilar to soap operas in the UK. They're watching films that are an hour and a half long that have heroes' journeys in them in their language, but all of that stuff is coming from outside their community. So when I go in as a filmmaker, you know, I try to, either I'm sort of sharing the process of filmmaking, or, you know, in the case of Socotra, I was trying to document the processes we'd set up with the workshop and turn that into a documentary that will retell that process back to the community. And I'm obviously directing that film, so I'm telling the story that I think that they should hear, which is a story that shows the challenges they went through, the internal changes, how people were excited and adapted, and tries to set up a kind of intention at the end of that. You know, we can move forward from here. So yeah, like anything, there's an element of well, I don't like the word manipulation because it sounds too negative, but I mean, you're creating patterns. I mean, everybody reads the media through patterns. I mean, that's how we, you know, when you're looking at TV news and stuff, you're not actually paying any attention to the content. Often it's the patterns that become so kind of important. So yeah, I'm applying, yeah, anyway. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I think about it a lot and have conversations with people, and at the end of the day, you know, deconstructing that stuff is a really important thing to do, and I think you can't sort of rest on your laurels with it too much, because it's, but I think the other thing is, don't over simplify the experience of people around the world and think that they're somehow living in a bubble where they're not already being subject to this stuff. I mean, you know, taking one extreme, I mean, ISIS, when they made their recruitment videos, were using Hollywood storytelling techniques to create the hero's journey with these lone wolf main characters in their films. So it's out there. People are already consuming it. So I think showing people the processes and deconstructing it, I think, is a positive thing. I think it gives people tools to work things out for themselves. It's all gone very quiet out there. I can hear you so far.
I'm sure Ollie would love to hear some more questions, or think about more questions if anyone has them.
Thanks, Neil. But no, I think, shall I just keep wittering? So, do you want me to just witter? I'll witter myself into trouble.
How do you, I mean, presumably each project you work on learns from what you've done before, right?
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff we did really early on was experimental, and I still think really powerful. I mean, one of the projects we did many years ago with UNICEF in Egypt was back in the days when HIV was a taboo subject. Anyone with, people living with HIV and AIDS were considered to be, well, it was a taboo subject, put it that way. There was very little empathy for them. And we did a bunch of interviews with HIV positive Egyptians where we only used their audio because they were very nervous about being kind of shown. And then we took that audio and we gave it to some kids, a group of young kids, and an Egyptian animator, and he trained them to make animated films, and they made all these animated films with claymation animating what they were hearing these people living with HIV and AIDS talking about. And we'd removed any reference to the actual disease, you know, talking more about how they feel, those kind of emotions, and seeing seeing what came out of that was pretty amazing, and hearing the stories from the kids going back home to their parents and telling what they were doing, and then together as families deconstructing what was going on and working out that these people had HIV and AIDS, and seeing the empathy that the kids had was a very powerful tool. So yeah, I mean, you sort of, you know, you have to think about your different audiences and find ways to connect with them. And I think even really old projects still are valid now, and new projects. I mean, yeah, it changes, I guess, over time. But so culture has been great because it's just been such a phenomenal support from the project, from the community, from the government there. I mean, you know, we went top down, started with the biggest guy and worked our way down, and it was brilliant. But just a side anecdote, I mean, I went to do a film in Colombia with the indigenous people there, and I tried to apply all the same methods that I was used to using in the Middle East, and it was a disaster. I turned up in a suit jacket ready to drink tea, and they were all like, who's this idiot in a suit? And then I tried to find a hero for the film that I could follow him, and halfway through he disappeared. And then I found out that, you know, if you kind of raise your profile within the indigenous community too much, you risk being punished for being a big head. So yeah, that was an interesting experience, and not an easy one. There's another question from Hannah. Hello, Hannah. What are you excited about working on in the coming years? Have your interests and ambitions shifted over the years? Yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, me and Hannah chat for hours about life in the universe, and I think that, you know, at the end of the day, for me, the older I get, the more I'm trying to, I suppose, kind of connect with something deeper inside, you know, and I'm very excited by this idea of the inner journey. You know, Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero's Journey, which has been very influential and has become a big influence on screenwriters, where you have that external hero's journey, and it's being sort of recognized more and more as being quite a masculine, not a male, but a kind of masculine journey. And I'm reading a book at the moment by Kim Hudson called The Virgin's Promise, which presents an alternative story form from the hero's journey, which is much more about releasing inner potential, which I found really exciting, and it makes me much more aware of exploring different story forms. And yeah, I'm trying to write more and explore things that way. I mean, of course, it turns out that writing is extremely difficult, but it is the cheapest way of making a film. On paper. Ooh, Adriana, do you think the workshops have changed somehow those children's lives? Just to go back to the title of this event. Well, it's funny because I actually went back to the village like 2 days after the event, and all the kids were back, sort of, yeah, back to their normal lives. Sort of, you know, and I sort of bumped into them, they'd look sort of like they were back to normal. So I was a bit like, you know, I was a bit disappointed to see that Hanny wasn't dressed up as some captain. You know, he was just sort of in the street kicking football, looking a bit bored. I mean, I think that there is an internal journey, but bear in mind, it's not just about them. I mean, that's why we document it and make a documentary film, because you want to share those experiences. And I should maybe get the pictures out that Ismail just sent me yesterday of the kids watching the film, and this is a year later, so they've all got a little bit bigger. But let me just try and pull those up, because yeah, it's these photos are from like this week, so, or the last couple of weeks. So they've been showing the rough edit, the bits that you've seen in schools and in the community. These are some of the guys in the last couple of weeks. You know, these are watching the film. He was one of the fathers, I remember. And here's Halut, who was learning the song from Adab's mother. So yeah, you can see that these guys are, you know, obviously enjoying watching it. Has it changed their lives? I mean, I think that I don't think we're looking for some great big change. And I think that, you know, that going back to that idea of the hero's journey and the internal journey, I mean, we're trying to create, in a way, less of a hero's journey and more of a kind of internal journey within the community. I mean, just as an example, a project that we worked on many years ago in Minya around animation and child rights. You know, there was a facilitator there who was a young guy from Minya who was part of the team. I mean, I can't take any credit because that project was something that I came in on, and he was already there, but he was part of it. And then years later, I was working on a job in Cairo and he turned up, and you know, he's now like one of the top photographers in Egypt who's you know, on the front, been on the front cover of Time magazine and all this stuff. So, you know, people go on their journeys, and sometimes people get influenced in ways you don't expect. And like I was saying, Ahmed Rumali was on Yemeni TV talking about Socotra plants. So I don't think you can, it's a difficult thing to measure. Thank you, Craig.
Well, thank you, Ollie. That was really intriguing, and it makes us want to have a movie night of some sort, I think, and actually watch your films.
Well, I mean, the shot up stuff is online somewhere, British Museum somewhere.
Okay, so maybe we can
the last
find
layer, it's called. You can. The last layer 2 is probably the most interesting one, where that you see the process a bit more. The Socotra one, where it's like 45 minutes long, and you know, we're trying to work out kind of what to do with it. I mean, they are using it on the island, but whether we sort of tailor it to try and get it into some sort of film festival or something here, but I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Okay, well, maybe we can share, or I'll share the short one with the people that have signed up or the people who attended. But thank you very much. I mean, one of the amazing things about doing things online is that actually people can be in very remote and diverse places and share the same experience of listening and watching and learning about culture and heritage. And we hope for those of you who've joined us that you've enjoyed it. I see from your comments, there are many enthusiastic comments about the event. And Ollie, thank you so much. Please join us for our future events, and Ollie, come back and share other projects that you're working on in the future. We'd love to hear.
No, of course. Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. No, it's been great. I'm just scrolling through to see who's there out there. I haven't really got a handle on Zoom, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. But thank you all very much for attending. And yeah, you can find me on, well, LinkedIn, really. It's kind of the only thing I use. But yeah, do drop me a message if you want to hear anything else.
Thank you all again, and see you soon.
Thanks, Renata.